All right, so this is part 2 of your final review. So last we started at or ended at 28. So now we're going to go ahead and go on to 29, 30, and 31. Grayson, do you have any questions on this? You sure? You positive? Okay, so no questions on this one. So then let's go ahead and go on to number 32 and 33. Okay, so number 32, Brian spends 3 hours of every day working on math homework. If he sleeps 6 hours a day, what fraction is his awake hour does he spend on math homework? So he spends 3 hours every day working on math homework. He sleeps 6 hours a day. So then if you take a look at this, for every 6 hours that he's awake, he is doing homework for 1 hour, right? 6 hours awake equals 1 hour of homework. 12 hours awake, which is doubling 6, is 2 hours of homework, right? 18 hours awake, which is now tripling 6 hours, is 1 times 3, which is 3 hours of homework, right? Okay, so he spends 3 hours of homework every day while working on math. If he sleeps 6 hours a day, what fraction of his awake hour does he spend on homework? So there are 24 hours in a day, right? How many hours does he sleep? 6 hours. So 24 minus the 6 hours he's asleep is 18. 18 hours he is awake. No, 24 hours in a day. He's sleeping 6 hours a day. So what's 24 minus 6? 18. So out of the 18 hours that he is awake, 3 hours he is working on homework, right? So the question is, what fraction is his awake hour does he spend on homework? Well, 18 is his awake hour, right? And out of the hours that he's awake, how many hours does he spend on homework? 3 hours. So then if I reduce this, which means I divide it by 3 on top and bottom, 3 divided by 3 is 1. 18 divided by 3 is 6, which means for every 6 hours that he is awake, he is spending 1 hour on homework. Do you see that? Okay, so you might have to just kind of like make sense of it by yourself. Okay. All right, so then any questions? You're not dividing it by 3. So there are 24 hours in a day, right? He sleeps 6 hours. 24 minus the hours that he sleeps equals the number of hours that he's awake. So in this case, it's 18, right? 18 is on the bottom, okay? Because the question is, what fraction of his awake hours does he spend on math homework? Well, 18 hours is the total that he's awake. Out of the 18 hours that he's awake, he's still awake when he's doing homework, right? And he's spending 3 hours doing homework. So 3 goes on top in the numerator, 18 stays on the bottom in the denominator, 3 over 18. 3 meaning that these are the hours he is awake doing homework. 18 is the total awake hours that he is not sleeping. So it's like this, okay? All right, any questions on number 33 and 34A and 34B? Let's take a look at number 34A and 34B, okay? Because I feel like you might have questions later. So estimating, right? First thing you want to do is we want to go and put this from a mixed fraction to an improper fraction, okay? 32, 35 over 8 plus 8 over 3, right? Now, you know that if it's 8 over 8, that's equal 1 piece. Does that make sense? If it's 3 over 3 for the second fraction, it's equal to 1, right? So let's go ahead and find the actual first, okay? Your lowest common denominator is what? Between 8 and 3. Yeah, you can always just multiply it by the numbers each other, like 8 times 3, 3 times 8, right? It's not always the best way because then you might end up with a really, really big number. But in this case, it actually does work. So you could just keep it with that. So then 35 times 3 plus 64 over 24. And when you add it, right? This is a mixed fraction, correct? So then you want to go ahead and divide it. Well, 24 times what gives me 169? If you think about it, this is like 20 and this is 170. You know that 20 times 8 is going to be 160, right? So let's see if this works. Okay, that's way too big, right? 6, 7, 8. Yeah, that's way too big. So let's try maybe 6. 13, 14. Okay, maybe that's too small. Let's try 7, okay? Oh, that's perfect. 24 times 7 is 168, gives me 1, right? So your actual answer is 7, 1 out of 24, right? But then it's asking me to estimate, so let's try estimating this. Okay, so we're going to estimate this. You have 4 and 3/8, right? Well, if it's 4 and 3/8, you know that 4 and 4 over 8 is 4 and 1/2, right? 3 is pretty close to 4, so you can do that 4, 1 and 1/2. This is the estimation, okay? And the second one is 2 and 2/3. Well, you know 3 out of 3 equals 1, right? 2/3 is, it's not super close, but it's close enough. So then let's just make that into a 3. Do you see that? Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to add them together. So 4.5 plus 3. 4 plus 3 is 7, right? 1/2. That's fairly close to that, right? You still ended up with 7, right? Yeah, so it's an estimation. I mean, if you were to really estimate this, you could also just say, oh, 4 and 3/8. Well, that can also just be 4, right? Because 3 is not close to 8. 7 and 1/2. If you didn't want to use a fraction, you don't have to use the 1/2, Grayson. Okay? You could just say like, oh, well, 4 and 3/8, let's just round it down to 4, right?
Yeah, that's what I did.
Okay, so 4 plus 7, or 4 plus 3 is going to give you a 7. We could do that. Okay? 4 plus 3 is equal to 7. Does that make sense? We don't want, we could avoid fractions. We could just round it to whole numbers. That's fine. All right, so now let's go on to number. Do you have any questions on 38, 39? You sure?
Are they real world situations?
No, they're finding the quotient and estimate. Let's do 39. Okay, the estimation one.
For my estimate on 39, I got one as an estimate, and my actual answer, I think it's pretty close, maybe just a little.
Okay, so let's take a look at 39. So we're gonna find the actual first, just so we have it, right? So the actual, you gotta change from proper fraction to a improper fraction. So we have 2 times 8, which is 16, so that's 19 over 8, divided by 1 times 6 plus 5, 11 over 6, right? Rewrite it, you have 19 over 8 times 6 over 11. You want to cancel anything top and bottom. Do you see the 6 and the 8? You could divide it by 2 because you're even, right? 6 divided by 2 is a 3, 4 divided by 2 is a, or 8 divided by 2 is a 4. Now you can multiply across. Okay, and then of course you want to divide it, put it back into a mixed fraction again. 44 times 1 is 44. Subtract, you get 13. Your answer is 113 over 44. This is your actual answer, right? So now let's go ahead and try to find an estimate, okay? Estimate of 2 and 3/8. Again, do you see how 3 over 8? I mean, like, it's not even half of 8, right? So I would just say it equals a 2, okay? And then 1 and 5, 6. Do you see how 5 is pretty close to 6? So we can make that into a 2. Do you see that? Okay, so then what we do is you're gonna put 2 divided by 2, right? What's 2 divided by 2? 1. Is that pretty close to what we have? It's pretty close. It doesn't have the 13/44, but it's pretty close. Okay. Make sure you don't do 2 plus 2, because at first I thought about it. I was like, 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 doesn't even go anywhere near to the actual number. Then I'm like, okay, we're not adding anymore. We're dividing. Okay. So just make sure you have the operations correct at the end. But does that make sense though? Okay. Because you know, and I just want to reiterate this, because you know that half of 8 is 4, right? And 3 is less than that. So that's why we're rounding down. Okay. All right. Any questions on number 40? Yeah. Okay, so go ahead and read it.
To raise money for costume. If each tub of cookie dough costs $4.75, how many tubs must members sell to make $570,000?
1 tub of cookie dough is $4.75, right? They need to make at least $570,000, which is a lot of money, right? So if 1 tub is $4.75, you're saying how many times can I fit $4.75 into $570,000, right? So what are you doing in this case? Divide. So 570 divided by $4.75. This is a really good question when it comes to like estimation. Mainly because if you do the actual, it's going to take you a long time because you can't divide with decimals, right? So I'm going to move this one over 1, 2, which means you're going to move this 1, 2. So you add 2 additional zeros, right? So if you just look at this right here, I have 475 divided by 570, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, right? Well, just looking at this, can you please stop doing that? It's kind of like saying 500 dividing into 570. And if I were to estimate this, okay, and round up, 570 will be 60, right? 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, right? So that'll just be 6 million, right? And you have, if I round that to this right here, do you see that? The 475 to that. Well, let's cancel 0. Cancel, 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 right? Well, then 5 goes into 6 how many times? 1 time. And then you're going to end up with 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 10,000, right? So a number that looks very close to that would be what? A, but I don't know if that's actually correct. I just want to make sure I'm doing this correctly. Hold on.
I changed my answer to B, so I'm thinking that.
Hold on. 1, 2, 3, divided by. No, it is. It's 120,000. So how do I, let's see, did I miss 60? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, that's because I forgot a 0. That's why. You see how there's 4 zeros, or actually 6 zeros after I do that? So this becomes a 60, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Because I forgot a 0. Okay. So if I cancel that, 5 go into 6 1 time, right? But then how many zeros do you have? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 zeros. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So which one looks very close to that? C. Right? So you could do that by estimation. Now, on the other hand, if you actually really want to do this, like just based on division, we could do that as well. Okay. we would just have to divide it. So let me, but you know, this is such a big number that it's probably better if you just do, you know, like estimation. So 475 goes in 570 once, right? 475, subtract it, and then you get a 95, right? Bring down a 0. 475, I'm thinking if I do it twice, 14, 15, will work. So put 2, 950, right? Gives me a 0. But then, do you see how you have 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros left? So you could keep putting zeros down, but you don't need to. You just put 1. Let me get rid of that. 2, 3, 4. And what do you have? 120,000, which matches that right there. Do you see that? Okay. That's your answer. All right. Any questions on 43? Do we need to go over 42? There's a 42.
No, I got that one.
You got that one? Okay, so just be careful with the tenths place, hundredths place, thousandths place. Okay. Obviously, when you're looking at this right here, first thing I notice is that this number here and this number here look like they're the biggest, right? Because they have an 8 in the tenths place, right? And I also notice that this number right here is the smallest because it has a 0 in the tenths place, right? So just be careful. After the decimals, you have tenths place, hundredth place, and thousandths place. Okay, you have a 0 here in the ones place. All of them has a 0. If there was an actual number bigger than 0, then that would be the biggest number. Okay, so just be careful with that. All right, any questions on number 44 or 43? Okay, any questions on 44?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and read it.
There are 14 basketball teams, 16 football teams, and 30 hockey teams participating in a sports tournament at a number of parks around the city. If equal groups of baseball, football, and hockey teams are formed to participate in each park, how many hockey teams will be at each park? Clearly show your solution and justify it using a minimum of 3 complete sentences.
So there are 3 parks, right? So park 1, park 2, park 3. Now there are 14 baseball teams, 16 football teams, 30 hockey teams, right? So you're asking like how many of the 14 goes here, but because we have to divide them into these 3 parts equally, right? So then you just basically take all 3 teams and divide it by 3, right? Because some of them will end up with like, you know, a decimal, which means that one park will have probably one more team, right? So if you have 14 divided by 3, if you're to do an estimate, I would say an estimate of 14 will be a 12 divided by 3, which is 4, which means 4 baseball team will be at each park, right? Then you also have 16 football teams. So football team divided into the 3 parks, well, it's not going to give me a perfect number, but if I were to estimate it, right, I could estimate 16 to a 15 divided by 3, which gives me 5 football teams at each park, right? Okay. And the last one that I'm going to do is 30 hockey teams. So with the 30 hockey teams, 30 divided by 3, that's perfect. Gives me 10, right? So 10 hockey teams at each park. So just by estimating, it'll be 4 baseball. It will be 5 football. And then 10 hockey, right? But you'll have a few left over, you know what I mean? Because you see how 15 is 1 less. So this will have 4 baseball, but the last one, or I'm sorry, look over here. 12 is 2 less, right? So this will have 5 baseball. Do you see that? But 4 plus 5 plus 5 gives me 14, right? It's close, but it's not exact, right? For 5 football means 16 minus 15 is 1. So there's 1 left over. So this will have 5 football, but this will have 6 football. Okay? 5 plus 5 plus 6 is 16, right? 30 divided by 3 is 10. That's perfect. So 10 hockey teams at each one. There's no difference. Okay? So if you have to use sentences to divide this, and she said you have to use a minimum of 3 sentences. Well, let's just go back and see what we did, okay? So what was the first thing that we did? First thing that we did was I rounded the 14 to 12, 16 to 15, and kept 30 teams, right? So we can say 12, this one was baseball, right? Football, and kept 30 hockey, right? And then you went ahead and divided each team by 3 parts, right? And then your answer was that you had, this was for baseball, 12 divided by 3 equals 4 teams at each park, right? And then you went ahead and did 15 football. 15 divided by 3 equals 5 football teams at each park. And then lastly, 30 hockey divided by 3 equals 10 hockey at each park. Right? And that's what you can do. Now, you can also mention that there are 2 extra teams from baseball, right? And 1 extra team from or in football from estimating, right? And you can reassign them back over there. You can reword it however you want, but this is basically the gist of it, okay? Okay. Do you want to take a moment and copy this down? All right, so we're going to move on to number 45. Do you have any questions on 45? You can read it. It takes a fourth of a gallon of milk to make batch of ice cream. If John has 1 5/6 gallon of milk, how many batches of ice cream can he make? Show your solutions using both model and mathematical expression. Justify your solution using a minimum of 3 complete sentences. You sure? Okay. So just looking at this part right here, remember, you're basically asking like, how many times can you fit 1/4 into 1 5/6, right? Because 1 1/4 of a gallon milk make 1 batch of ice cream. So how many batches can he make if he has 1 5/6? So it's 1 5/6 divided by 1/4, right? So 1 5/6 put into a improper fraction is 11/6 divided by 1/4. So then you change the division to multiplication. So 11/6 times 4/1 because you have to flip the reciprocal, right? Anything that has an even number top and bottom, you can always divide by 2. So 4 becomes a 2, 6 becomes a 3. 11 times 2 is 22. 3 times 1 is 3. So then I'm going to divide this from a improper fraction into a mixed fraction. So 22 divided by 3 is 7, which leaves the remainder of 1. So he can make 7 1/3 batch. So that means he can make 7 batches of ice cream and 1/3 of a batch, right? So then if you have to write this, especially if you have to do modeling, Do you remember how to model with division? Like modeling. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not quite sure how she wants you to do this, but if I were to have to model this, let's just go back over here. So if I have to go ahead and model this, okay, 1 and 5, 6, right? I have to model it. Well, remember, to represent 6, you need to have, please stop doing that. Something like this, right? The 5 here will represent 5 of these being colored, right? So 1 will means you have another one like this, right, in 6 pieces, and this is colored, the whole thing. This represents 1 and 5, 6. Do you see that? And if you have to divide that by 1/4, right? 1/4 will means that you have 4 pieces, and you have one of them colored. Do you see that? Okay. So you could go ahead and model showing it like this, but the actual showing of modeling is very complicated, obviously, right? So if you have time, I would just show it like this, okay? And then write equals 2, and what was your answer again? It was 7 and 1/3. 7 and 1/3. So if I were to have to show that, I would put 1/3 is like that, right? 1 will be like right here, but then you also have to have 7 of these. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So then just color these individually. Do you see that? Okay. I know that's not the best way of showing modeling, but I mean, you guys didn't really spend a lot of time on modeling with division, so that's how I will show it. Okay. All right. Questions? Oh, and the sentence, I saw the problem wondering how many times does 1/4 go into 1 and 5, 6. This is a division problem, and I changed a mixed fraction to an improper fraction. I divided and ended up with 22/3, which I changed back to a mixed fraction, which is 7 and 1/3 batch of ice cream. Okay. All right. Question on number 46. Do you want to go over number 46?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
That one was easy.
Okay, so then we kind of come to the end of this, which is on coordinate planes, right? So I'm just gonna go over this very quickly. Remember, this is positive x, negative x, right? Positive y, negative y. Origin is in the center, 0, 0. Okay, and this is always gonna be x followed by y. Okay, so let's just practice a little bit. What's the location of this point right here? Of that. Actually, you know what? I'll just use this one. A, right here. A. Let's just use that. What's the location of A? Right. X is -10 because you're going this way. Do you see that? Okay. And 2 because you're going up by 2, right? What's the location of I? Don't look at the answer.
I used 8 and -2.
Good. What's the location of, she actually doesn't include, what about this one here? I'll just use that one.
Which one?
This one right here. Let's just say that one is gonna be K. I'll just use that as K. What's the location of that?
0 and 9.
8. Let's go by 2s because that's 8. 6, 8, 10, right? Okay. That's okay. What about location of this one right here? And let's put that in right there. What's that? This is just an extra one.
Which one is
This one right here. Yeah.
N is N is 4 40.
Good. I think you're probably good with this. Yes. Okay. Do you have any questions on? I think that's it. It's 47. Oh, there's 48. Do you have a question on 48? You sure?
Yes.
Okay, then I think we're done. All right, well, that's your entire study guide for your final.